What do you do after you just scored the biggest album of your career? If you're Ian Gillan, you don't take a break, you don't tour for a year and then slowly ease into writing the next record. You lock yourself in the studio, work through the middle of the night because you literally can't record during the day, write songs at breakneck speed, and somehow produce what many fans consider your greatest heavy metal album. Released in 1981, Future Shock wasn't just another Gillan record, it was the album that cemented the band's place at the forefront of the new wave of British heavy metal. It reached number 2 in the UK, produced 2 top 20 singles, and turned Gillan into one of Britain's biggest live rock acts. But while Britain embraced it, North America barely knew it existed. Today we're looking at the making of Future Shock, the frantic recording sessions, the unforgettable songs, the television appearances that made the band household names, and the chaos that erupted just as everything seemed to be going perfectly. Because by the end of the story, one guitarist would be gone, and his replacement would eventually become one of heavy metal's most recognizable players. After the success of Glory Road, Gillan had momentum on his side unlike ever before. The lineup of Ian Gillan on vocals, Bernie Tormé on guitar, Colin Towns on keyboards, John McCoy on bass, and Mick Underwood on drums had evolved into a remarkably tight unit. They weren't just touring together, they were living together musically, and songs came together quickly because everyone understood what everyone else brought to the table. Ian Gillan and Colin Towns remained the primary songwriting partnership, but this was hardly a dictatorship. Bernie Tormé's explosive guitar ideas, McCoy's thunderous bass lines, and Underwood's powerhouse drumming all shaped the final project. So every member left fingerprints on the album. The title itself came from Alvin Toffler's influential book, Future Shock, which explored how rapid technological and societal change overwhelms modern society. That concept gave the band plenty of inspiration. Rather than writing another collection of straightforward hard rock songs, they tackled subjects like nuclear anxiety, information overload, social unrest, and the uneasy relationship between humanity and technology. Of course, because this was Gillan, all those serious themes were balanced with plenty of wit and pub humor. It gave the album a unique personality. It was heavy without becoming grim, intelligent without becoming pretentious, and above all, it sounded exciting. One thing that made Gillan so productive during the era was how quickly songs came together. Ian Gillan had an unusual writing technique. Instead of obsessing over lyrics from the very beginning, he'd often treat his voice like another instrument. During rehearsals, he'd sing complete nonsense, gibberish that meant absolutely nothing, but it helped establish melodies, phrasing, and rhythm. According to the band, they worked out the song's tempo and key while drinking pints at the pub next door before rushing back into the studio, and Gillan improvised much of the vocal performance on the spot. It's the kind of story that sounds impossible today because modern albums can take months or even years to complete, but Gillan sometimes created songs between last orders at the pub and sunrise. The recording sessions themselves were equally unusual. Future Shock was recorded at Kingsway Recorders in London, Ian Gillan's own studio. Normally, owning your own recording studio would be a huge advantage, but in this case, it became a nightmare. British Airways had recently moved offices directly above Kingsway. The airline installed an enormous computer mainframe system upstairs, and those machines generated constant electrical interference and mechanical noise that bled into the recording rooms below. Recording during normal business hours was almost impossible, so the solution was to become nocturnal. The band simply flipped their entire schedule, sleeping during the day and recording through the night, working until the early hours of the morning after the office workers had gone home and the computers quieted down enough to capture usable takes. It created an almost surreal atmosphere. Long after midnight, fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and determination, Gillan hammered out one song after another. Rather than hurting the music, that strange schedule may actually have helped define it. There's an urgency throughout Future Shock. Nothing feels overly polished, nothing sounds calculated, and everything has the energy of 5 musicians racing against the clock. Production duties were credited collectively under the Kingsway Recorders name, with engineer Paul Chas-Watkins helping capture the band's increasingly aggressive sound. Compared to Glory Road, this album hit considerably harder. John McCoy's bass was heavier, Bernie Tormé's guitar was rawer, and Colin Towns layered keyboards without softening the attack. It was still unmistakably Gillan, but it now leaned much closer toward the emerging heavy metal movement. The album wastes absolutely no time announcing its intentions. The title track, Future Shock, explodes from the speakers. It's fast, aggressive, and relentless, with Bernie Tormé tearing through the song with chaotic, almost reckless guitar work, while McCoy and Underwood drive everything forward like a runaway train. It immediately tells listeners, won't be comfortable hard rock record, it is heavy metal. Another standout is the Ballad of the Lusitania Express. One of those songs that perfectly captures the chemistry between the rhythm section, because McCoy's bass and Underwood's drumming push the song forward with tremendous momentum, while the whole band sounds as though they're trying to outrun themselves. Then there's If I Sing Softly. Running well over 6 minutes, it's the album's emotional centerpiece. And instead of relying purely on speed, it constantly shifts between quiet melodic passages and explosive heavy sections. It demonstrates just how versatile Gillan had become. They weren't simply writing faster songs, they were writing better songs, songs with dynamics, songs with atmosphere, and songs that rewarded repeat listening. Of course, the album also produced two of the biggest singles of Gillan's career. The first was New Orleans. Originally recorded by Gary U.S. Bonds back in 1960, Gillan completely reinvented it. Instead of straightforward rock and roll, they transformed it into a blistering heavy metal anthem filled with screaming vocals and explosive instrumentation. When the single reached the UK Top 20, the band appeared on BBC's legendary Top of the Pops. Watching Ian Gillan perform it was unforgettable because he looked every inch the rock star, with long hair flying, microphone stands swinging, and those impossibly high screams reminding everyone why he became one of rock's greatest vocalists. Then came perhaps the album's most beloved song, No Laughing in Heaven. It's unlike almost anything else in Gillan's catalog. The verses feature an almost spoken word delivery that many fans have jokingly called an early form of rap, years before rap metal would even become fashionable. Lyrically, it's classic Ian Gillan. The narrator reforms his sinful lifestyle, hoping to earn a place in heaven, but when he finally gets there, he's bored out of his mind because there's no drinking, no partying, no excitement, just endless solemnity. Eventually, he begs to be sent somewhere else more entertaining. It's clever, funny, entirely tongue-in-cheek, and audiences absolutely loved it. The accompanying Top of the Pop appearance, however, became famous for an entirely different reason. Behind the scenes, Gillan's enormous success was hiding serious problems. Financial disagreements had been building for months. Despite selling records, playing increasingly larger venues, and climbing the charts, not everyone felt they were sharing equally in the rewards. Bernie Tormé had reached his breaking point. Just as the band prepared to film No Laughing in Heaven for national television, Tormé refused and he quit. Suddenly, Gillan found themselves in an almost impossible position. One of Britain's biggest rock bands was booked for one of Britain's biggest television shows without a guitarist. For that performance, it simply carried on, and it remains one of the strangest Top of the Pops appearances of that era, but finding a permanent replacement couldn't wait. When Future Shock finally arrived in April 1981, British audiences responded immediately. The album shot all the way to number 2 on the UK Albums Chart, becoming the highest charting album Ian Gillan ever achieved with his own band. The success wasn't limited to album sales, because both New Orleans and No Laughing Matter in Heaven became major hit singles. The album quickly earned silver certification in Britain. Critics praised its combination of crushing heavy metal, memorable melodies, Colin Townsend's inventive keyboards, and Ian Gillan's unmistakable sense of humor. Gillan suddenly found themselves occupying a unique position. They appealed to traditional hard rock fans, they appealed to the rapidly growing new wave of British heavy metal audience. Somehow they also appealed to mainstream record buyers. Very few bands managed to balance all three. Across the Atlantic, it was a completely different story. In America and Canada, Future Shock might as well not have existed. Virgin Records never secured the kind of widespread North American distribution the album desperately needed. Instead of appearing in shopping malls and chain record stores, it survived mostly as an expensive, imported LP. Only dedicated collectors and specialist record shops carried it. Without proper label support, radio stations ignored it, the press barely covered it, and even touring couldn't generate the momentum necessary to break through. It's one of heavy metal's greatest missed opportunities. At a moment when British heavy metal was beginning to explode internationally, one of Britain's strongest bands couldn't get its records into American stores. Today, many historians consider Gillan one of the greatest British hard rock bands that never truly cracked the American market, and Future Shock is often cited as Exhibit A. Subsequent tours showed exactly why British audiences loved them so much. Night after night, Gillan delivered fast, energetic performances built around Future Shock, earlier favorites like Unchain Your Brain and Trouble, and naturally Smoke on the Water. Concerts were loud, chaotic, and completely exhilarating. Then came the defining moment, Reading Festival 1981. Headlining one of Britain's biggest rock festivals, Gillan delivered a blistering performance before tens of thousands of fans. By this point, however, there already had been one enormous change. Bernie Tormé was gone. His replacement was a young guitarist from White Spirit who had learned the band's material almost overnight. His name was Janick Gers, and yes, the very same Janick Gers who would later join Iron Maiden and remain there for decades. For many fans, this performance marked the beginning of an exciting new chapter for Gillan, but that chapter would be surprisingly brief. Because before 1981 was over, the band would return with an ambitious double album that mixed brand new studio material with live recordings from Reading Festival. It would be called Double Trouble, and as we'll discover next time, success had never been bigger or more complicated. So, this is the continuation of the Deep Purple story. Check out this playlist. It has all the videos in the series starting from the beginning. Right now, I'm in the early 80s, so I'm talking about adjacent bands like Gillan and Rainbow and Whitesnake. But once I get to 1984, Deep Purple will reunite. But I will get there. In the meantime, I still have a few albums to talk about. So, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you in the next one.